Good afternoon and a happy new year from the BFM studio. We will be broadcasting the very first program, Expert Online, in 2021, and it will be a special program, such as also the next ones in January, because these programs are dedicated to the elections of the Rector of Tallinn University on February the 1st. Today is Epiphany. It's also Wednesday, which is a play on words in Estonian, though not in English. What is Epiphany? It's the end of the Christmas period. And according to a legend, it also means that 3 wise men came to visit the newborn Jesus. They came from the east. But today we welcome one wise man in the studio, a philosopher, Mr. Tõnu Viik. He wants to become the next rector. Why is this your wish? Good afternoon from me and a happy new year to all. Why do I want to become a rector? I think that I have felt a bit unbalanced for a time, and I have felt this way a bit unsteady all through my career. Every time I have chosen to focus on philosophy, to take some time off to think about philosophy, it happens that after a while I start to think that I now want to return to my daily life, because otherwise I'm a bit left out of things. So I take upon myself some management tasks. My life will become very intense, and then after a while I again will start to feel this call to think about philosophy. Such a fluctuation has always been a thing for me. I have shared myself between philosophy and management tasks, and I think that it's now again time to choose managing. Of course, there are egotistical reasons as well, because a task like this is a great opportunity for self-development. I think that in the past it was called character building, because it builds your character, it changes you. It is a great opportunity to develop such features as empathy, being more balanced, being more goal-oriented, more humble, and of course it teaches you time management skills. I have obtained all of these skills throughout my career as a manager, and I think that when I become a rector I will also be able to study these things. But let us now talk about life. You were born at Jõhvi, a small municipality where you also went to school. I don't think that as a boy in Jõhvi you dreamt about becoming a rector, because small boys normally have different dreams. What did you dream about? I don't really remember my dreams. I do recall a conversation with my peers, boys from my own class, where everyone was saying what they dreamt about. Somebody wanted to become a fireman, someone a driver, not an astronaut, though, because being an astronaut was not so fashionable anymore. But I was ashamed to talk about my dreams, because I wasn't sure if I really wanted to do what I was thinking about. And finally I did say that I wanted to become a vagrant. And this idea, it was due to my grandfather, because my grandfather was very young when he retired, younger than I am now. He was only 45, because he had worked as a miner. He had worked in a mine, and so he walked around for days. He didn't really take his car and go sightseeing, he just walked around his home. He walked in the forest and on the meadows that he knew well around the mine in which he had previously worked. And I accompanied him very often, and I thought that his life was a worthy one, that it was a really good idea to walk around and to feel what the nature was like, to feel that your thoughts were influenced by the landscape you were looking at, and also vice versa. I wanted to achieve this, and I thought that it would be nice to be a vagrant. but you are still a vagrant or a walker, to put it in nicer terms. I am. But what type of walker? Are you a walker like Nietzsche, who used to walk he used to have very long walks, he used to go to the mountains, or are you a different kind of walker? I think that many philosophers like walking. If I can, then I walk like Nietzsche did. I take long walks, I go to the mountains as well. Best vacations for me are the ones where I can go somewhere and just walk around for days. But let us now go back to your childhood. Jõhvi and the school in Jõhvi. First you went there, but then you came to Tallinn, and it happened rather quickly. Yes, I think I was either 10 or 11 years old at the time. And then I went to Nõmme High School, which of course was called Tallinn Secondary School number 10 back then. And I met very interesting people there. At that time, the school was known because there were people there who liked punk music. And we had several school bands there, like Generator M, which is maybe known even today. And from time to time we also had special festivals like Shrove Tuesday, Punk Festival, and then we had a performance on a Teacher's Day. They were not always so calm. And again, I remember this euphoric day, this euphoric experience. There was a band playing, I think Generator M, in the hallway. All the teachers were in the teachers' lounge thinking whether they should call the police or militia, as we called them then, and we were in the classroom with the students enjoying this, and I felt that this is what the collapse of the system was like. And I also felt at the time that the society would now embrace punk. But did you have the attributes that punk people normally have? Did you at least have green or red hair? No, not really, no. But I did have punk boots and a long black coat, so I had some things, some features, yes. Okay, but we did not embrace punk. Something else happened in Estonia. But before it did, you decided to go to Moscow and study philosophy. I think it happened approximately a year before the Phosphorite War broke out. I think that happened in 1988, no, 1987. Yes, and I went to Moscow in 1986. Why did you make this choice? Why did you choose philosophy and why did you choose Moscow? I chose philosophy after I had chosen Moscow, because you wanted to go away, you wanted to leave. I did. I wanted to go as far away as possible, and not because I didn't like what I already had, but because I thought it was exciting to embark on an adventure. And unfortunately, you could only have your adventures in the East back then. And there were 3 universities, Moscow, St. Petersburg and Kiev universities, which accepted so-called quota students, which is why I got in Moscow University. I would otherwise not have succeeded because my Russian was not good enough and also my knowledge in history was not perfect. But I managed to win the quota place for Moscow University because I took a test at Tartu, and so I got in, and when I had gotten in I had to choose the specialty, and I thought philosophy would be the most attractive choice. But it wasn't that you wanted to become a philosopher. No, it wasn't. I knew by that time that I was interested in something that had to do with reading and thinking, but it was only a vague understanding, the same kind of vagueness that people who now go to university experience today. I did not know what philosophy was, and I was rather preparing for an adventure, not really studies. But later I fell in love with philosophy. I thought that it was really, really great. And also the philosophy department at Moscow University is huge. It's further divided into subdivisions, that of ethics, aesthetics, history of philosophy, philosophy of religion, and so forth. And there are, I think, more than 100 professors, or there were at the time. And if I remember correctly, then 100 students were accepted 1 year, or maybe even 200, and then 100 of those couldn't complete the first year and left. So the numbers at Moscow were really, really big. And life was exciting. It was exciting for me as a student. And it was also exciting because of philosophy, which I studied there. But what were the emotions like at the end of the 1980s at Moscow University? I witnessed a great change. In 1986, that was before I went to the army, I saw Moscow University, which I felt was Stalinist. It was rather different from what we had in Estonia in the 1980s. It was easy in Estonia. We had punk music. And I didn't really know anyone who actually believed in communist ideology. But when I went to Moscow, I met such people. I met people who were actually fanatical communists or Bolsheviks. And quite quickly I had conflicts with them. It was the time when Gorbachev started, but the first thing that Gorbachev did was actually not glasnost, but he started his programs by fighting against alcohol and alcoholism. And this fight was also done at the dormitories of Moscow universities, and me myself with some friends were also seized during this fight, and there was even a process to expel us. And at the time I also witnessed how the Communist Party, and certain groups inside the party actually said that yes, we don't like people like this studying here, they should be expelled. But you were not expelled. You actually completed your studies with a diploma, and then when you came back, we already had the Republic of Estonia. We had already regained our independence. What was that like for you? Of course, it wasn't a surprise for me because I frequently visited Estonia, and we also spoke about the developments in Estonia with my Moscow students and others. And I think that Russians living in Estonia were rather sympathetic of the Estonian cause at the time. They talked about it, they thought highly of it. We also shared the leaflets of Popular Front of Estonia, which were published in Russian, and people were really eager to read those. There was a lot of interest, and even professors in our classes, they talked about Estonia. I think it was rather the very end of the 1980s or the beginning of the 1990s, but they spoke about the freedom fight of the Baltic states, and Vyacheslav Ivanov, for example, said in the classroom that we are all happy to witness these developments, they might come true. So the emotions were actually very positive about Estonia. Yes, they were. Because people felt that the Baltic states were actually the front line of perestroika. They admired this, they thought highly of this. So you came back and you started to work at Tallinn Technological University and then also at the Estonian Humanitarian Institute. I did, yes. Did you feel at that time that it was necessary, that philosophy was necessary for building the new society? I think this was a rather confusing period and there was no such clarity. we feel now that the society is a neoliberalist one and we don't really need philosophy, we don't need humanitarian sciences. Maybe we need a little bit of sociology so that we would understand the numbers and different graphs better and would be able to manipulate the ratings of political parties. But back then there was no such emotion, because Estonia had regained its independence largely due to the creative sector, and it was felt that creators such as authors, translators, other humanitarians and social scientists, that they had initiated the whole process, and possibly they would be honored by the new society because of their role. But the society then began to think that we need functional economy, we need balanced budgets. So yes, the interest in philosophy, maybe it came later, but in the beginning of the 1990s, times were promising. We had a lot of ideas, big hopes. Possibly we miss them now. However, we will talk about this later. First, I would like to go back to Atlanta. When you came back, you studied in Finland, in Germany, and then finally for a longer period in the United States, where you wrote your doctoral thesis. Yes, actually, I did my doctoral studies at Atlanta University, and the rules there were such that you could choose universities once you started writing your doctoral thesis, but you don't really start writing it in the very beginning. For the first years you have to study different philosophies, and then after 2 years you will defend your right to do the doctoral thesis. And once you have obtained this license and start writing the thesis, you will also be entitled to choose another university and go elsewhere. So I did. I went to Germany for 2 years. I went to Hamburg University and to Berlin Humboldt University as well. What did these different universities teach you? What can you take from this experience to your job as a rector? I think that there is a big difference between Germany and the United States, both in how they feel about students and how they feel about professors. If you take Germany and compare it against Russia and the United States, it's probably a country which is most similar to us. We have a rigid bureaucratic system with norms. There are people who can meet these requirements and those who can't. And also a lot of academic freedom. But professors are not so much dedicated to working with students. But the US universities are different, because in the United States, when a person is a professor and has an academic career, this person also has to teach a lot, because the students pay very high fees for education, and therefore they also demand a lot from the universities, from the professors. It is rather common in the United States that if a professor teaches a class, he must actually meet with these people 2 to 3 times per week. And even though there are 40 people enrolled to a course, every person gets written feedback. So we can't even imagine the amount of work that the professor does with the students in the United States. However, it must be pointed out that a lot of this work is done by the doctoral students, especially in the type of university where I was. So yes, it's true that the professor will not be talking so much to the first and second years. But when we speak about how these countries feel about professors, then the United States has a trust-based system. If somebody becomes a professor, it doesn't mean that he enters the university and he will be evaluated, but on the contrary, he will not be evaluated. He has already been evaluated because he has already been elected, and he will do as he sees fit, as he deems best. Of course, there are those who are lazy, which we are always so afraid of and always try to control. While there are people who are lazy, it's not true for the majority. Most professors at Emory University, where I worked, were really dedicated. Would you like to have less control in our system at our university? I think that is an impossible task in the European system, because our entire system is based on surveillance and checks. We can't really pay out 1 cent of grants without first reporting on how this money will be used. If you compare our system to my experience, then I will tell you this story. I wanted to go to Berlin and to Hamburg for 1 year, so I needed to get some money, and I wrote requests, but my requests were just 2 short emails, and the panel then assessed the emails and said, yes, we agree, you will get this money, you will get the funding. So funding was also trust-based and free of bureaucracy. I want to ask, given the fact that you have studied in so many different places and in so many different languages, how important is language for you? How important is language for philosophy? It is very important. It doesn't seem to be so important when I listen to you, because when you went to Moscow, you studied in Russian, in the United States in English, in Germany in German. Yes, but it wasn't easy for me, especially in Russia, because when I went to Russia, I had no preparation. I don't know what I even did at the Russian lessons at Tallinn Secondary School number 10. Possibly everything else, but I didn't study Russian. I didn't have enough, I didn't know enough, so it was very difficult for me. And the problems at Moscow University were not only to do with Gorbachev and the anti-alcoholism policies, it was also to do with trouble in studies. But luckily I also had some subjects such as logics and mathematics, which were easier for me, and in which I had good grades, because they were not so much to do with speaking perfect Russian. When I went to the United States and Germany, then of course I had better command of the languages, so it was also easier for me to study there. But when I came back to Estonia, I had this rather interesting problem. I had to start applying my knowledge in the Estonian language, but I had studied philosophy in other languages, so I first had to establish vocabulary, and it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, and I had this feeling that, yes, I know the Estonian language, but it is so difficult to discuss what I have studied, my discipline. Of course, I know the Estonian language as well, but it's very difficult to speak about philosophy. So I'm a little bit afraid to be speaking about philosophy, but still, let's do that. Maybe you could say a few words about your main areas of study. Your doctoral thesis had to do with Hegel and the term phenomenology. What does this mean? Phenomenology is a branch of science that studies human experience. It's about things that we experience from our own perspective. Psychology may, for example, study what's love, and it will be studying this concept from the objective perspective. For example, it's possible to state to establish that one person has compulsive thoughts about another, about their love object, that their blood pressure will increase when they see the love object and so on. But phenomenology describes the experience of love, the content of individual experience. And of course, it doesn't have to be love, it can be some other emotion. I have applied this science to very different individual and collective states of mind. Phenomenology studies phenomena from the perspective of being experienced by one specific individual. It's an interesting day today. Many people all over the world are very emotional, and this has to do with Atlanta, the city where you studied. I don't know what you read in the morning, but I put on TV and I watched CNN to see who was elected to the US Senate and whether Democrats would gain majority or not. How important are political issues for you? They are rather important. I pay attention to politics, I read the news all the time, because I believe in the old saying which states that if you don't deal with politics, then politics will deal with you. I think it's a shame that political awareness or understanding that we need to keep abreast of current affairs, that this understanding is so low that not everyone understands they should go to the elections. And I have been telling my students, you should be awake, you should be aware to understand what's happening around you and what's happening to you. When I studied at Atlanta, times were also quite difficult. I had already returned from Germany when George Bush started the war against Iraq. And the university held massive demonstrations against this war, and later, of course, we found out that the war was actually meaningless. Students both at Atlanta and at Moscow University were very much engaged. They wanted to take part, and nowadays this wish is not so strong. Would you want the students of Tallinn University to be more active? I think that youth in general should be more active in politics. I don't think that it would be my task to tell the students that you now need to be more active on the political arena. But I think that being politically active is one of the ways to live your life to the full. This spring, 6 years after the state of emergency had been declared, you wrote the following question. Is it the first stages of apocalypse brought along by the neoliberalist capitalism, or will everything go on as it used to go? 9 months have now passed. How will you reply to your own question? Can you see any kind of change, or is everything the same? I think that our belief in market economy was not destroyed by the crisis. Money before people, you mean? Yes, I think that we still believe in money, and people in Estonia still believe that financial matters come before the matters that are important for society, that a balanced budget is more important than salaries paid to teachers. Yes, everything is the same. These beliefs did not change. But did we find out something new about the human being? Yes, of course. We have discovered something. We have discovered that it's very important to meet other people. Everyone is singing high praises to the electronical devices that we have become accustomed to, but I think that everyone also agrees that it's important to have the physical place where you can meet other people, because this physical environment has an impact on people. And I also think that all of us miss the opportunity to meet other people in the physical environment. But did we learn anything about the human being himself or herself? Are we somehow better than expected or maybe worse? I think that the human being does not change their beliefs unless there is a really painful need to do so. Have we changed our way of thinking? Maybe we have changed one approach. Maybe more people now think that they shouldn't go to the office when they have a cold. 3 years ago, maybe many people thought that it's a brave person who will show up at work when sick. And more people now think that a sick person should only work remotely, if at all. But whether we know more about who we are, what we want, I'm not so sure. A few days ago, last week, I saw the program Hard Talk on BBC, and a Dutch thinker, Rutger Breggen, whose book Utopia for Realists is very popular, and it has also been translated into Estonian. It was translated a few years ago. And he was also asked about the essence of the human being. He said that the human being is essentially good. And I think it was very interesting to hear that if one believes in human beings, then you will build up a society in which the best features of a human being will become seen. Do we believe in the human being? I think that according to our official doctrines and ideology, such as the ideology of market economy is says that no, we don't believe in the human being. But of course we have other ideologies and beliefs. Take democracy, for example. Democracy is based on the concept of an enlightened being who is capable of taking adequate decisions, who is capable of becoming more mature, and who is capable of differentiating between the right and wrong. But the concept of the human being in democracy, yes, it is positive. It's positive, but maybe it's also utopia. When we create institutions, then these institutions are based on the positive image of the human being. Because we don't want to create institutions where we must believe that everyone is egotistical, everyone is out there to get others. No, we think that people want to cooperate together when we think of institutions. So institutions are based on the positive image or positive concept. But I don't think that the issue is whether we are good or bad as people. We are social beings. This means that essentially we can become more as human beings only by interrelating with other human beings. When we speak about others, we have to think about machines, not just people. Ray Kurzweil, a futurologist, has said that by the year 2029, machines will already be as intelligent as people. What could be the fate of the human being if that happens? I think it's a very, very exciting subject. There are people who work with artificial intelligence and basically think that they are creating another God. Because artificial intelligence is better in thinking than human beings are, and thinking is the highest quality of a human being. That's why many people believe in AI, and that's also why, because so many people are afraid of artificial intelligence, stating that if the artificial intelligence does not want to make the world better but wants to abolish people, the artificial intelligence will be able to do so. And it doesn't really need to be smarter than a human being, it just has to be as smart. Yes, but intelligence is a very difficult concept. Machines already are more intelligent than people. They are much better at computing. They are more rapid. They can compose sonatas. I don't know about sonatas, but the machine can play chess. And it will outplay a human being after it has played so many games of chess that no person will be able to do the same. Our lifetime is too short to play that much chess. But I would say that the machine does not have the same kind of intelligence as a human being precisely because of that fact. For example, Kasparov has played a lot less, and if the machine had only played so few games, he wouldn't outplay Kasparov or other top players. So this means that the machines are not always better as people, and it also means that a lot of thinking that a human being does is not computing and calculating, but the machine is only better at computing and calculating. We can think emotionally and rationally, we have the feelings, we have different states of mind which have to do with one idea or another. The machine, any machine, is not capable of doing the same. Maybe they could learn to imitate, to think in the same way, and then they would seem as intelligent. But they, as for now, they are not capable of taking over. So robots will not make us happy. I am now referring to one of your favorite subjects. I think they can make us happy. They can. Because the capacity to think is not so important. But what about emotions? Emotions are important. But I think it's enough for the machine to do the same that we do with other people. Imagine a person sitting across from you, not feeling the emotions, but pretending to feel some kind of emotions. It's the example of the lying lover. You can fall in love with someone who is only pretending to love you as easily as you can fall in love with someone who actually is in love with you. Because the decisive factor is the feelings that you yourself have. If you believe that your partner also has a feeling of love, then it's enough for you to fall in love. And the machines can be programmed to pretend emotions. Actually, human beings are not so demanding about the emotions of others, and also we are not so perceptive. We have run tests with artificial intelligence, and in the test we can only hear the voice of the artificial intelligence, but we can't see the face. And this type of thing will keep our interest for 2, 10, maybe 20 minutes. But if you take this voice and you add an attractive human body, even in the virtual world, if you can see someone on your computer screen talking to you, then this person will be able to hold your interest 3 times longer. So the image of the person will be very important, and we become less demanding. And also we are less demanding about our partner if they are more attractive. Therefore, robots will be able to solve the problem of being lonely. Yes, if the project works out, then yes, but we still have many shortcomings, so it might not be a success story. Firstly, we as human beings are possibly unable to forget that the robot does not really feel anything. In reality, he doesn't feel anything. And secondly, when we speak about love, we want the other person to take their decision autonomously, in an autonomous manner. We want the other person to feel his feelings against my physical and psychological profile. We don't want to create these feelings by clicking a certain button, by inserting a code in a machine. We have to forget too much in order to enjoy the love of a robot. But of course, if we are motivated enough, I think I am afraid that we can take this leap of faith. I hope that we are unable to take this leap of faith, because I would want us to love another human being. If the robot cannot solve this problem, what are the other problems that could be solved and where Tallinn University could also contribute? You said before that unfortunately the studies are empirical, that the studies that are understood and supported financially are the empirical studies, but we also have humanitarian sciences, which has not got so much funding. What do you say about that? I wouldn't say that the situation is so bad. If, for example, we compare the situation of translators and artists, maybe the comparison is not so bad, or if we compare them against poets. But yes, the society in general does not believe so much in certain branches of sciences, in such scientific areas which cannot be described by numbers and graphs. But still we care about these things. We care about love, about being loved, about leading a good life, about being happy, about the meaning of life, satisfaction with life or satisfaction with one's job. All of these issues are important for people. They are very complex issues and they cannot be calculated in numbers. But it didn't speak about environment, globalization and other things like that. Well, when we speak about globalization and environment, then we are convinced by studies which manipulate data. I don't know how many of the environment activists today are interested in philosophy of environment. I don't think that there are so many. They want numbers. They want to know what are our current CO2 emissions. Of course, these numbers are important. I'm not downplaying their importance. But if we only speak about numbers, we are missing out on something. What could the university do to contribute to this discussion? You have said that there would be no major reforms. But paragraph 2, section 3 of the law on Tallinn University states that this university is an innovative and integral institution providing knowledge and scientific studies. So what about this innovation and smart way of living? How will it be done? I think that reforms are just one way of innovation. And of course, I'm not saying that reforming something is bad, but when we think about the universities, it doesn't really give good results. Because if you are implementing a reform by sheer administrative force, you don't achieve the desired results. Why is that? Because the objective of any university is to inspire people, and you cannot inspire people by force. You cannot force a professor to inspire a student in another manner. You can convince this professor to use different methods. And maybe the students can convince the professor by giving him feedback, by stating that we would want another type of class or another type of materials. Even so, any professor works best if he is allowed to do how he thinks is best to do. Because if we don't give people this choice, this freedom, then we just lose these people. We will not achieve anything. The same goes for talking to the society. You cannot solve important problems for the society by telling somebody to do something. You can't tell a teacher to teach the society certain lessons. It doesn't work that way. Speaking about universities, we are speaking about the fact that some people, they have the call to teach, and it's difficult to manage this inner call of people. But that's not what we expect from the universities. The society expects universities to give the society a certain number of specialists. You speak about inspiration. You write about the academic spirit of the university, but it doesn't really meet the expectation of the society. I think that this is a rather restricted and reduced understanding of universities. A university is not just a place which gives you specialists. Of course, universities provide specialists for the societies, but that's not all, because we need to think about how the university will give you the specialist. A person who becomes a specialist first must be inspired. He must learn something at the university that changes him as a person. Only then will he be a better specialist. And maybe he will be a good specialist in different areas of life. But this is only one side of the story. Our world today is very complex technologically, and it is a globalized world. Therefore, we need the university to speak to the society about scientific positions. We need to explain the science-based positions to the society because the society still needs to hear those positions and understand them. And it is the job of the university to give this information. So I think that universities are very important tools for the functioning of the modern society. So universities have many functions. I think this is one of the positive aspects and outcomes of the pandemics. Scientists now voice their opinions more loudly, and the society actually listens to them. Yes, that's true. As a society, we really cannot put our trust in anything else than science. We cannot trust the politicians who try to work out solutions. But of course, politicians also turn to scientists for help. And we couldn't find the answers from any religion. We didn't think that any of the churches could tell us what we should do. None of the alternative scientific fields has helped us either. In the 21st century, science is our best hope. Maybe it's a bit sad, but it's also rather promising. Of course, that's not 100% true. We do have the problem that many people believe in all kind of things. But this is another story. Do you think that the fact that science is now becoming more important for people can also mean that education will become more important? Of course, people in Estonia have become more and more educated all the time. The ratio of people who have university education is very high in Estonia, especially among women. If we compare ourselves to other countries in the world, that's a fact. How do you see our future? Will we all have university degrees in the future, or is this not really an objective? I think that this situation is not strange. We have had stable development, which means that the society has become more complex, and in more complex societies, people spend more time on socializing. If a society faces a disruption such as war, then they will not pay so much not so much attention on education, because that will not be possible. But if you have a stable, developing society, then people will also stay at school for longer. As for Estonia, I wouldn't be so optimistic. Yes, we have many people who complete their bachelor degree. But I would like to remind us that it's only a recent development that the first stage at the university is only 3 years. And even employers refer to the fact that the first stage of university education is now so short. Within the last 30 years, we have cut 40% of the length of the studies. And I think that the society should understand that 3 years at the university is actually not enough. But we have to compare things that can actually be compared. Nobody expects you to get what you used to get in 5 years. About higher education in America, about university education in America, and the title asked, is college education now finished? The article talked about the millennium children and said that possibly they will be the generation with the highest education ever. But people in the future will not go to the college and university so frequently because a number of millennium children are dissatisfied with their education. They think that they don't get enough from the college or university and it doesn't really help them along in their lives. It also stated that people put more focus now on practical skills, and the author of the article said that they had read some kind of studies which show that many young people are no longer interested in going to the university. Yes. This really is a problem for America. I have read similar articles, but I think we need to look at the context. Students in America have to pay hefty fees for their education. It's either your parents who give you their savings to go to university, or you pay for your education for your entire life yourself. And such a high cost makes people think whether taking such loans, paying so much, is actually worth the effort. So until we have free university education, university will also be popular. Of course, it would be good if we can keep this education free, but the taxpayer must have enough funds to fund it. I think that we are now already drawing to a close, and so I would like to pose a few quick questions from a different field of life. You have stated at meetings and also in your writing that everything now happens on the media, and the university should also use more media. It should be more visible on different platforms. I looked at Facebook, which is a very popular social platform. You were not present there. You have some photos on Instagram, but not on Facebook. Should you be there if you become a lector? This is a difficult question. I have avoided Facebook differently from half the global population. Yes, differently from all others. But I do this in order to practice good habits. I want to spend less time in front of the screens. It is possible that if I become a rector, I have to go to the internet. But I think it's possible. Yes, I have to think about it, especially when I go walking. Women who are managers are often asked, if not always asked, how they manage to balance their personal life and work life. What about you? I think it's easier for me. I have a family, and my family consists of my daughter, whom I see at weekends, and on work days I dedicate myself to work. My children are not all adults. One of them is 10 years old, but the other one is already 23. What type of father are you? Well, you should ask my children.
loodan, et mõistev.
But I hope to be a reasonable dad, a good dad, one that is close with his children. We talked about your love for walking, and you said that you love long walks, not like Kant, whose name I didn't remember in the beginning, but who always took the same short route. But what else do you like doing if you're not working? I think it's rather a boring reply, but I love reading. I like to read. And in addition to philosophical literature, I also like popular science and I like fiction. So I like to read when I have some free time and I'm not walking. But days are so short. We don't have a lot of daylight right now and you can't take very long walks in the forest, so it's nice to read in the evenings. Let us also talk about the daily life of a philosopher. Do you always think about big things, important things? Or do you sometimes have to think about relationships or personal problems before you go to bed? How does a philosopher think in his daily life? I think that he thinks the same way as everyone else. I'm now asking myself about the thoughts about big things. I think that these thoughts are rather rare, but you have so many articles, and these articles are about big things, big thoughts, important thoughts. If this is the case, I have to say that I write in the mornings. I like to wake up early. I like to look at the sunrise. I like to perceive how daylight is embracing the day. Sometimes it's rather tiring because the sun rises so early in summertime. But I like sunrises because it gives me the chance to think. And when I think, I also like to write. So I like mornings. I like to work in the morning. But you don't think about the big things, about the important things in life when you walk. No, when I walk, I think about the things I see and perceive. When I see something new, I will also have a new thought. I try to be present in the places where I walk. I try to perceive things around me so that the things I see would become a part of my world. Nature is kind of a cathedral for me. I can feel that something enters me, enters my head, and the things entering my head are actually not my own thoughts, because I think my own thoughts when I go back to home, when I'm still at home, when I'm making tea and I'm looking at the sunrise. All right, I think it's time for the final question. Rein Raud, our previous rector, has had big ideas. He's well known in the society. I myself met him at Toompea. But this was the time when people had to fight for Tallinn University. Dietland, on the other hand, was more of a team player. And his activities were more visible inside the university because he was a person conducting reforms. What would you be doing? I think that I have to think about the previous rectors because they have set me an example. I myself am a team player. I don't really imagine myself solving any problems alone. And I think that Tallinn University should be more visible in the society because the society needs that. But it would also be very good for us, for Tallinn University, to be more visible. Thank you very much and I wish you all the best. Thank you.